Today we're going through an entire season in franchise mode on Madden 22 to see what a year in the mode looks like, check out some of the new features, and how they work. If you play Madden every year, a lot of this is going to be stuff you already know, but if you haven't played in a while or if you're new to franchise mode, this video should help you get pretty comfortable with how the mode works. So we're starting a brand new franchise here. You can go with the cloud franchise option or offline. With online, you can obviously play with your friends in the same franchise. And if you're offline, you can control multiple teams yourself. You cannot do that if you are online. When you are setting up your franchise, there are a few new options here that have to do with some of the new features. Staff talent cost modifier, we'll talk about that. Progressive fatigue, something I'm really excited about. Practice injuries, if you want those on or off. And you can also toggle options here for breakout scenarios if you don't want those. Dev trait regression, how many players roughly you want at each development trait. So we're just getting into the mode here, and the interface has changed. I think that some of it is more efficient. Some of it still loads pretty slow, which is a little bit strange. I'm sure that'll get ironed out. But this is what the new interface looks like. You have the home, news, league, and options tabs with different options beneath those. And this main home screen will handle your playing the games, your things to do, and managing the roster. The news feed to me is a step back from where it was previously, but it's not a big deal anyway. The league tab shows you the entire league schedule and league leaders once you actually have some stats. That's pretty nice. And then the league history tab that they introduced in 21 does have every Super Bowl ever played listed here with the winners, the MVPs, and those yearly awards. And as you play seasons in your franchise, they're added to the list. Alright, let's get into the new stuff in Madden 22. We start here with weekly strategy, which is where you're going to be game planning for your opponents and choosing what your emphasis is going to be. How do you want to approach your opponent? Do you want to stop the deep ball, the short pass? There's data given to you, so you know how your opponents typically play. There's a nice play calling report that can be useful. And when you're choosing the game plan, it's basically giving your players rating boosts in certain departments that'll help them in those areas. There are some negatives as well. There's a little bit of trade-off with anything you choose there. And then you also go into your practice manager here, and you can decide how intense you want practices and how you want to divide the reps. Do you want all the reps going to the starters? Do you want to split or just have all the backups get reps? And that is going to give development to players, and the more they practice, the more XP they are able to get. You do this for both sides of the football. Defense first and then offense. Keep in mind, while it might be tempting to give all the reps to backups or whoever you are developing, this is also controlling the rating boosts for game day. So if you're giving the backups more reps, your starters get less of a boost for game day. It's a decent introduction to this feature with a layer of strategy. And then once you get past game planning, you can go into practice mode and mess around there if you want. And there is some stat tracking in practice that is pretty cool. But really in this tab, all you want to do is make sure you have your goal decided on and which focus players you want to be given that extra experience. You have 3 players there, but you can unlock up to 3 more with your staff points and developing your coaches, which we'll get to here very shortly. But once you've decided on your goals and your game plans for the week, then you simulate training and see what happens. Again, the more players play, the more of a boost they get and the more XP they get. And here's the breakdown of everything, including in that right-hand column, injury. Players can get hurt in practice. They are more likely if you're practicing full pads, the highest intensity. If you don't like that, you can turn off practice injuries in the settings. Pay attention to fatigue as well. This game now has progressive fatigue, which means that fatigue for players will carry from week to week And that's something you'll want to pay attention to, and it's something I have to do a bit more testing with to really understand a bit better, but it's a feature I've wanted for a long time. Now, they've also added in coaching staffs, re-added that in. We last had coaching staffs, I forget the Madden, it was last in, but around 10 years ago. We now have offensive and defensive coordinators to go with the head coach and the player personnel department. And now all these coaches and the player personnel department has talent trees. If you've played any games in the last 5 years, you're probably familiar with skill trees. They're in everything, and now Madden. So you have different options here for how you want to develop your coaches, and in the top right hand corner of the screen you have staff points. This is basically a currency you're earning inside franchise by completing goals, and then they're spent on coaches any way you see fit on any of your coaches or player personnel department. You can go down these trees and see which skills you think are most important and try to find the easiest way to get there. And along the way, there are different ratings boosts you can give to your coaches or staff modifications to make it easier for your offensive coordinator to develop, or whatever it is you want there. I forget how many talents there are, 50 or so. And a lot of these are basically the coach XP packages from previous games put into this talent tree. This is a much better way of upgrading coaches. But there are some new things that are pretty cool as well, like being able to unlock extra focus player slots. And it gives the coaches a lot more personality, and it has that NCAA 14 feel where coordinators had a nice impact, and it was always exciting when you could get a good coordinator in that game. And these skill trees are really designed so that you really want to pick a certain area to focus on, like a head coach being more of an offensive-minded coach and going down one part of that tree to really focus on the offensive skills. I think it would take a while to max out the tree here, and you're able to go in the settings and basically make it either easier to get staff points or more difficult. If you're like me doing more of a long-term franchise, I'm probably going to be on the slowest setting in the game. You're also able to fire your coaches at any time. You can't when you're playing as the head coach because you are the coach. You can't fire yourself. You can retire. As the owner of a team, you can fire your head coach or your coordinators anytime and then easily rehire them. It's a very simple implementation. You're not actually getting a contract with that coach. You're not competing against other teams. So it's very basic, but we now have coordinators in Madden. And when you finish your games, you'll see the results of your goals. You're setting goals for your head coach, your OC, and your DC, and then you get staff points if you can accomplish them. Sometimes you get something for at least getting halfway to a goal, and then your staff points update every week, and you can buy more packages. There are legacy goals that are available, season goals once you're actually in the season, although it's only one that I know of. Scenarios are still a part of franchise, and they're getting even more of an emphasis in Madden 22. I'm happy to see that because for many years they would put out a new feature and then not do anything to develop it, but I think the scenario engine has gotten better. We'll go through a lot of those during the season here. There are 3 preseason game weeks and then the preseason bye, so you can play all your games, sim to that preseason bye, and then make your final cuts. It's a little more convenient, I'd say, than the previous way, but you can make your final cuts, go to week 1, you still set this same season goal. What do you want to do this year? This is the same as it's been for a handful of years. And then if you hit triangle at any point here on this main screen, it brings up all of your goals. You can go back to see what your season goal was, track your legacy progress, and then whatever it is for that week. I wish there were more season goals. I think that would be something cool to add to this feature. And here's some of the new scenarios now. They have these little press conferences, and they're nothing special. They're not voice acted. It's all subtitles, and they do get repetitive quickly. But what is nice about them is they will introduce game day goals and give you an objective and add a bit more to franchise than what was previously there. And it's rare to go through a week and not have at least one scenario pop up. There were a lot when I went through just this test. In this case, we end up with a goal for approaching week 1, trying to keep the Bengals under 200 yards passing. What happens if we accomplish that? Staff points. That's how that all works. Upgrading players still works the same way. You're picking which archetype you want to get better, and then randomly ratings are assigned within that archetype. I do wish there was a bit more performance involved with player development, and I've come to really enjoy that in MLB The Show this year especially. As you're going through weeks, you'll accumulate more staff points, so you can obviously upgrade anytime, and a lot of these talents can actually be upgraded twice to give more of a boost for a certain skill. Then you have your team schemes in this menu. This is where you just are basically choosing what scheme you run and then how many players are scheme fits, which means they get more experience through practicing if they fit the scheme. There's also a talent you can get that makes everybody a scheme fit, but it takes a long time to unlock. You can go to formation subs as well. I don't think this works with custom playbooks. That was a feature in NCAA 14. I don't know why it doesn't work that way here. But if you want to edit formation subs and make sure certain players are in for certain packages you like, then you can do that here. I haven't messed with this much in a while because I do like my custom playbooks. The manage roster option has, you know, your depth chart, NFL rosters, salaries, all that good stuff. This is the nice menu to see your depth chart though, and all of these background colors are all development. Bronze means normal, silver is star, gold is superstar, red is superstar X Factor, and blue is a hidden development rookie. Nothing's changed on that front, but this is where all of the roster management is going to be handled. It's just a little reworking of the interface, but most of this is the same as it has been. Also, if you don't want to wait until week 3 to negotiate contracts, you can go to re-sign players and at least see what players are looking for before that actually pops up as a thing to do. You just can't offer anybody a contract until week 3 at the earliest. I like some of these scenarios that popped up when there was a big matchup against an elite player. In this case, it was Minnesota going up against Seattle and Russell Wilson, so it's specifically a scenario about Russell Wilson and what the defense is going to do. That gives you a goal, 75 yards rushing or less. On top of that, it also gave us a gameplay boost here for play recognition. Week 3 is still the first time you get to scout or offer contracts to expiring free agents. This has not changed. There is going to be a scouting update coming in September. We do have some details on how that is going to work, but if you start a franchise now, you'll need to start a new one if you want the updated scouting. Otherwise, it's the same scouting as it's been now 5 years. I forget when this was introduced, like Madden 15 or something like that, and it really hasn't changed at all. So I'm really looking forward to a new scouting system, and I'm not starting any major serious franchise until it's out. As you go through the season, you'll have more things popping up in the news feed: injuries, big performances, trades, and sometimes draft stories as well on the right-hand column, and those are usually giving you very good tips as to who could be a player to draft with maybe hidden development, or a player to even avoid at times. I do like this weekly schedule layout showing every game for the week and the league leaders. I like to check on that every now and then, and now it's just a lot quicker to do so. Although there is something that we lost here. No longer can you look at the entire week's results. So if I want to go back to see every week 1 game, I haven't found anywhere where that is listed. You get this weekly layout, but only for the upcoming games, nothing that's like finished. I like to see that added in so you can go back to see prior weeks if you wanted to. You can see all the games individually, but not the entire week all at once. not a huge deal, but it is something that is no longer there that I have seen. Free agents, this hasn't changed. In-season free agents only sign to 1-year deals, and they have a salary they want, and they will not allow you to offer them anything else. You still can't check on a player's stats either when you're signing them as a free agent, which really needs to be added in. Here's an instance of a practice injury. They're usually very minor. I don't think I've seen anything longer than a week. But again, you can turn those off if you don't like them. Here was the aftermath of the Seahawks game. We ended up losing in this simulation to Seattle. The goal was to keep Russell Wilson under 75 rushing yards. I don't think we accomplished that. And actually now we get -5 play rec for the next game. I like that they're adding stuff like this to franchise because I think it'll make it easier to replicate how teams go on hot and cold streaks and how one bad game can quickly become a couple. In this instance here, we were 0-4, and I decided to put a lot of the blame on Kirk Cousins. I had an option there. Some of those scenes have options, and I think that they could go further with that even. We have the traditional breakout scenario. We've had these for a few years where a player's trying to go up one dev trait. This scene is after we lost again because the Vikings have been terrible in simming for the past like 5 Maddens. And nothing really happened here with Kirk. I was kind of disappointed to not see like a morale drop off or something because we called him out, lost, and then it was just kind of nothing. He had a goal. I don't know if it happened, but I like to see a bit more with that, maybe a big morale drop or something. But I have seen morale as a whole be more of a factor in Madden 22, and it doesn't have to drop far to start making an impact. Once a player is under 50, you're going to see ratings go down, and if a season spirals out of control, get ready to see every starter with like -2 or 3, sometimes 4 to their overall, because the morale is that low and it's impacting their ratings that much. Here in week 6, we have a new scenario that I thought was really cool. There are scenarios now for bad weather games. I'm not sure if it's every bad weather game that you come across, but in this case, it was a game where it was going to rain against the Panthers, so we went to a ground attack goal. I wanted to get into the game to make sure this worked, and sure enough, it is raining in Charlotte. Another new scenario here. The assistant GM wants us to look at a specific player in the upcoming class. I imagine this player would have hidden development or at least be solid. I scouted D. Richardson. You'll find out soon why I couldn't test out actually drafting him. And here was the aftermath of the rain game. A lot of these scenarios come in 2 parts. Not all of them, but typically you'll have a press conference showing the results. We lost the game, and we're going to have negative ratings in the running game for the offensive linemen for the next game. So losing has a lot of negative elements in this game. I like that a lot. Here's another scenario with the assistant GM, just suggesting free agent moves. This isn't something that I would ever actually use, but it is there. I wanted to test out the trading here. I don't know much about how much better the logic has gotten. They have made some tweaks to the trade logic, but I don't think it's ever been, I think, to a point where you can't exploit the CPU. And with the staff points and talents, there are so many ways to make it even easier than it already is, which is a bit scary to think about. I like this scenario here, big rivalry game, Vikings and the Packers, and this is one of the only scenarios where they let you get a bit more aggressive with how you wanted to approach it. Trash talking the Packers, we want to force 3 turnovers on defense. Now we actually won the game in simming and I didn't have to force it. Unbelievable. So we ended up getting +10 morale for everybody. Maybe that's so much because of how aggressive I was, like high risk, high reward there. So that actually worked. And this created a scenario now for turning around our season where again I could be a bit more aggressive or reserved. And this is basically a tiered scenario where the coach is on the hot seat. Now, Coach firing is a setting in franchise that you can turn on or off. But if you interact with this scenario, it is going to override your selection and allow you to potentially be fired. I don't know if there's just a certain scenario here that you can ignore and you can avoid that storyline playing out, but I obviously interacted with all of them. And this created a situation where I could only lose one more game this year. When you get later in the season too, you can see the current playoff picture. This is a nice interface they added in the last game. And then we go to the next week, and I couldn't afford to lose any more games. So we end up with this short little cutscene where Mike Zimmer gets fired mid-season, and I had to restart because I had to get more footage for this, and I forgot I was in the cloud, so I couldn't just take over a new coach. So in the second version, I chose the Chiefs to make it a little bit easier. Here is a short week scenario playing out where you have the Thursday night game. How do you want to approach that? And then we get to the playoffs and end up with a playoff blizzard scenario. It's kind of cool that this pops up as a story, but Madden certainly does not have blizzards in this game. They have snow, but I think they have to really work on the weather in this game, especially the snow. This is not a blizzard. I wouldn't even shovel this. I just wait for it to melt. We ended up losing though. Travis Kelce could not believe it. Apparently he's never seen more snow than that. And we end up with end of season little sequence here. And that takes us into the Pro Bowl, and this is the same. You can play the Pro Bowl. There is another press conference. They've loved adding in the press conferences this year. I'm just glad there are some gameplay effects because the scenes themselves you can just kind of skip. Not enough variation there. You can check out the Pro Bowl roster as well and then play it if you like. Then you get to Super Bowl week where there's an extra week to scout and you can check out all the awards. Running backs are pretty much winning MVP every year right now. I'm sure there are going to be some tweaks to that logic and maybe the sim stats. But running backs are easily getting 2,000 scrimmage yards in the simming, which is supposed to be a big deal, but it's pretty routine here in the current simulation. Sim stats as a whole are better, higher rushing leaders. The receiving stats do look a bit better, but we're still seeing slot receivers get so much of the emphasis, and that's how you end up with Demarcus Robinson, Hunter Renfrow, and other slot receivers at the top of the charts over better receivers. After the Super Bowl, you see the new season recap, and the Ravens win in this simulation. This is a new week in franchise called Staff Week. You can go through and see all the staff moves that other teams have made, all the coaches that have been fired and hired to this point. Not every team will actually fill their vacancies during Staff Week. Some will, others will in the next stage when you sim ahead. Keep in mind, if you have a head coaching vacancy, you can hire any team's coordinators to be your head coach. You cannot just sign them to be your coordinator though. It has to be an upgrade for them. After this, in the next stage, you get your retiring, and I noticed one thing here that's missing that's actually kind of a big deal is the regression screen. I can't find it. The page that shows how much every player regressed. As of right now, you have to look individually unless I'm missing something there. I actually simmed a whole extra year because I forgot to check for regression and then come to find out it's not even there. But the rest of the offseason is basically all the same. You're trying to re-sign your players, and sometimes you offer a bunch more than they want and they still turn you down. Still got the combine stats starting in stage 2 of the free agency. Free agency 1 is when you start going to unrestricted free agency to see all the available players and make offers there. But this system is all the same from what I've seen. I wish that they would change things up a little bit with free agency. And one thing I would really like is if they did a better job of kind of making an event out of getting a player under contract. Like here you just sim and then it's there at the bottom of the screen. Like, I feel like there's a much better way to show a player's signing. I mean, put Ian Rappaport in the game on NFL Network with the text on screen saying, sources, Tyrann Mathieu agrees to a contract with the Kansas City Chiefs or something, and do that for the top 10 players or something. Like, there's got to be a better way to present this. But eventually you get to the NFL draft, and there's a weird bug in the game right now with this fog all over the screen. Sometimes it goes away, and then it immediately comes right back. So, I don't know. Sometimes you can't tell who the other teams have drafted. When you draft a player, you get to see if they have hidden development or normal. In this case, top running back here, 78 overall hidden development. Pretty cool that I wasted my draft luck for just this video. And now, at the end of the draft, you can go to the draft recap. I like doing this and just sorting certain ratings. I like to know, you know, did I get the player with the best catching in the draft or best zone coverage? And that helps puts things into perspective, because sometimes you get, you know, 75 zone coverage and you're like, whatever. But like if you go ahead and see, oh, that's the best I could have done, period, then you can kind of pat yourself on the back a little bit or see where you could have done a bit better. I wish to let you sort there by position. One more thing that I don't actually want to show here because there's NFL footage. There was a Hall of Fame scenario, and it was for DeMarcus Ware. It was a whole video package, Rich Eisen with commentary, and it did introduce a little boost here. But I don't know if that's something you'll see more than once. I haven't tested that out. But that's a year in Franchise and Madden 22. Hope you all enjoyed today's video. I hope if you're new to franchise mode that this helps you get into the mode. I think there is a lot of fun to be had, even if we still want to see franchise get a lot better. Happy to see some new stuff in the mode this year, and hopefully there's more than just the scouting update that they can add in with scenarios and whatever. But that is going to do it for today's video, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a like if you did, and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you all next time. Have a great day.